CENTCOM commander admits failure in Syria Strategy. Appearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee, General Joseph L. Votel acknowledged that the main goal of U.S. policy towards Syria, that is, the removal of President Bashar al Assad, has failed. Announced by President Barack Obama in 2011, the demand for al-Assad's removal led to an increase in U.S. involvement in the war that persists in Syria to this day.
The U.S. is in Syria illegally, illegitimately. It's sponsoring the Kurdish militias in the northeastern part of the country, which is the most oil-rich and agriculturally rich part of the country. And but what we just saw with Afrin is that it does not want to go into confrontation with its NATO member ally, Turkey. So the U.S., they don't want to admit full defeat, but they are being defeated in Syria. Their foreign-backed and sponsored terrorists are being defeated. And this whole thing was a Western-manufactured war that they had planned. So for them to say they don't have a plan and they're just going to go and see what happens, I mean, that very well could be the case, but they also could have a couple of contingency plans in place that they plan on going through. And their main reason for being there right now is they want to keep an eye on Iran, and they also want to stay close to their main ally, which is Israel.
While the White House seems to lack a comprehensive strategy in Syria, its Kurdish allies are now giving up the so-called fight against Daesh in places like Deir al Zur, allying themselves with the Syrian government to defend Kurdish parts of Syria against Turkey. Hezbollah leader says Saudi Arabia offered Syria hundreds of billions of dollars for reconstruction if the country cut its ties with Iran. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said the offer was made twice by the Saudis but rejected by the Syrian president.
The offer that was made twice, it was for hundreds of thousands of dollars for reconstruction, and it's almost comical that Saudi Arabia would make such a offer, knowing that they're one of the main sponsors of terrorism. They're one of the main backers of the terrorists in Syria. So of course the Syrian government is not going to accept that. They're not going to turn their back on one of their main allies, Iran, and accept some Wahhabi tainted money. Saudi Arabia has been killing, innocent people in Yemen for the past 3 years. It's been supporting terrorists in Syria, throughout the war. And there are very few leaders these days that will not accept to be bribed or, submit to the Saudi Arabia's demands. Like, for instance, the US, the UK, they have no problem, allying with Saudi Arabia. But Syria does not want to do that. They have their allies. They're not going to sell them out.
Nasrallah also charged that Saudi Arabia was using dirty means to interfere in Lebanese upcoming elections. Saudi involvement in the country's internal affairs was plainly shown in last November when Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri was summoned to Riyadh and forced to resign on Saudi TV. Russia's military said on Monday it expects to come to an agreement with a major militant group to arrange its exit from Duma, the last rebel-held town in eastern Ghouta. The town is controlled by the Takfiri terror group of Daesh al-Islam, heavily supported by Saudi Arabia. Confirming the news, Syria's pro-government Al-Watan Daily added that each side will study a draft agreement within the next 3 days.
What we saw on Monday was there were 56 buses that were carrying about, I think it's 3,641 people, and that includes 850 armed fighters. And they were leaving Jobar and Zamalke and Ain Terma, Arbain, and they were all going to Idlib. 400 people actually left Duma as well. So in total, we've seen since the Russians opened up their humanitarian corridors, we've seen 114,000 people leave these terrorist-held areas. And a lot of them have been saying that, or some of them have been saying that they don't want to fight anymore, that they were receiving money from Saudi Arabia and that, you know, they don't want to fight. Others are saying that once they get to Idlib, they do want to join one of the terrorist factions there and fight there as well. But it's definitely a defeat. Each one of these steps is a big defeat.
Retaking Douma could be another key victory for President Bashar al Assad's forces as they are trying to gain control of the region on the outskirts of Damascus.